So everybody now, it's time for Becky's session. Becky Flint from Pepper Studio. She's going to be talking about testing and learning and using influencers for market research. So let's, without further ado, because we don't have much time left, welcome Becky to the Virtual Social Day stage. Yay, welcome.
Hi everybody, so happy to be here. Welcome to my session at Social Day. I'm really excited to take you through all about what we do at Pepper Studio and how we've actually been working on using research to better inform our campaigns and get a better result for our clients. So my name is Becky, and as you can see from the clips before, I actually started off my career as an influencer myself. So when I was very young, I started my own YouTube channel, I suppose, and my videos went viral in Japan. And all the way through my teenage years, I was making content online and working very much from the influencer side of the spectrum. And when I grew up a little bit, deciding what I wanted to do, I just loved working in that space so much, but I really wanted to forge a career for myself. And so I started working at a few different influencer marketing agencies, more on the brand side, and started, not only sharing with them everything that I knew from my many years of working in the influencer space, but from the influencer side, but also learning so much about how they work from the brand side and realizing that actually what the influencer sees is very often only the tip of the iceberg. And there's so much more that goes into running campaigns below that. So I've kind of learned a lot from both sides of the spectrum, and I feel like that really helps inform what I do at Pepper Studio, which is the agency that I co-founded with my two co-founders, Joe Friend and Alice Jones. So without further ado, I'll get into my slides. So what is Pepper Studio? So Pepper Studio is an influence marketing business. We've been around for over a year and a half now, but myself and my colleagues have been working in this space for many, many years, kind of just honing our skills and bringing together our expertise on the different sides to hopefully give a full-rounded experience for our clients. So we work only on influencer marketing campaigns. We work across all different kinds of sectors, all different kinds of sizes of business and campaigns. So sorry, that's my doorbell ringing. I'm just going to continue on. So what we do at Pepper Studio is we work across 4 core parts of the business. So that is campaigns, intelligence, insights, and vital connections. And vital connections is a key one because this is our connections with the influencer industry and how we work with them and maintain those connections both with the influencers directly and also their talent agents. So as for Pepper Studio, so I mean, this is our Pepper approach of how we do things, and this is our responses to the kind of challenges the industry face. But one of our key kind of core components of the business is we are quite small and nimble, and we work with all different kinds of brands, and we really try and treat influence marketing as a media space, which we don't really see done so often in the industry. But it really helps us make sure that we're finding the right kind of audience for the brands as well as influencers, because you might see an influencer who seems like the perfect fit, but actually their audience doesn't quite align, and so it's really about finding the harmony between the two components there. So just a few of our clients that we work with. If you have any more questions about that, you can obviously send me a message in the app or find our website online as well. So final kind of overview of just very quick influence marketing, why we do what we do and how we do it. The final part is obviously the channel rationale. So we work across all different social media platforms from Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, and also podcasts. And each platform does a different thing. So if you want to screenshot this slide, you can and refer to it later. But it's just our kind of cheat sheet as to which social media platform is maybe right for you, your campaign messaging, and what you want to do within influence marketing. So the final thing to mention about that is YouTube is a really big one for us, and the reason why it is so good is because it's kind of where evergreen content lives, and your campaigns can grow and grow. And similar to that, Instagram is a really great way to reach a lot of people, depending on whether you use grid posts or story posts. Stories are really great for a shorter kind of amount of awareness within your campaign, or those kind of burst, very reactive parts of your campaign. I digress. Let's move on to the next part. So at Pepper Studio, we offer all sorts of different intelligence tools, but the one I'm going to be focusing on only today is research. And this is something that we've really tried to harness with our business, especially in the past year, because we feel like it adds so much value to our campaigns. And also it gives a lot more insight for the influencers as well into their own audience. And we have a few different ways that we implement research, but the first one I'm going to go through with you is called Test and Learn. So the way that we implement is we work with influencers. Now, this is all just kind of example content I've got on the screen for you right now, which I've just mocked up to kind of give an example. And this is for Instax, who we've worked with in the past. And the way that this works is essentially we'll work with the influencers on a preliminary basis. So before we've even signed the wider contracts and decided the wider direction of the campaign, this is kind of what we're going to do to really ensure that we're, taking the right steps forward and we're really understanding the influencers and their audience. So what we'll do is we'll work with an influencer and we'll work with a brand and come up with a few different questions to kind of tell a little bit more about the audience of the influencers. So for example, in this, the questions might be, have you ever used an Instax camera before? Or have you thought about what you're going to get people for Christmas this year? And do you ever print off your digital photos? And asking these questions can really give us a lot more insight into the audience and give us an awful lot more insight into the influencers' audience. And we'll do this by using the native formats of the platforms. So we work with Instagram, and we'll work on Instagram stories using, say, for example, the polls or the question box or even the sliders. And YouTube as well has this functionality where you can use community posts to ask an audience a question. And you'll find that actually the audience's responses will differ on from platform to platform. Even if it's the same influencer, their audience might be very different on YouTube compared to Instagram. And there's a few other social platforms such as Twitch who will also give you this polling functionality, but we find that it's a really great way to start on a campaign. So once we've put out these little feeler questions, we'll then take on the results. So that's the optimization stage. And from this, we can gather, who we're going to proceed with on the campaign. And also we can tailor the key messages. An example of this is when we worked with Google Assistant in the past, who obviously their technology is basically voice activated commands using a hub in your home. If you've got a Spotify premium account, you might have a Google Home device or Google Nest coming to your house soon. I know that I do. Such a great deal. But I digress. So basically, obviously, the voice activated commands, Google really wanted to figure out if audiences either had the device or if they had it, were they using it effectively? And so some of the questions that we were asking were, do you have a Google Home device or do you use Google Assistant? And if 90% of the audience say yes, then the next part of the campaign is going to be all about tailoring that key message to then work on actually how can they best benefit from their device. So do they know, it's education focused, right? So do they know about this command or this command? If, the majority of the audience say, no, I don't have one, then the message for that particular influencer and their audience is going to be, let's try and direct them and encourage them to purchase their own. And then maybe in future phases of the campaign, we can re-ask this question, see if the percentages have changed, and then try those future key messages from along the line. So here are some small examples of live content as well, which we did with Tio Pepe. And we're going to actually show you a little bit more about Tio Pepe feature on in this presentation. But for now, Tio Pepe is a Fino sherry alcohol brand. And we wanted to work with different influencers across the kind of food and drink space online. And the reason why Tio Pepe wanted to run this campaign is because the creative was WTF, what the Fino. So many people didn't quite understand what Fino was, what the flavors were, and it's a little bit more of a niche drink. And so we wanted to really help people understand actually how can you enjoy this Fino Tio Pepe and what does it taste like and what would encourage people to taste it more. And so here are some of the questions that we implemented with the different influencers. So as you can see, the results that we got from it varied massively depending on the influencer. And even these influencers were part of the same tier, so they were all micro to mid-tier influencers, all on paper would look quite similar. The results that they were able to get varied wildly, and it shows that there's so much value in getting this kind of granular data. And this feeds back into what we were saying before about how influencer marketing, you can treat it as a media space, but actually there's not very many media spaces that will offer this kind of highly granular data. So the kind of takeaways from this section of test and learn, the first phase of how we run this kind of research, is that the poll respondents, it's important to remember that while you won't be getting, say somebody's got 30,000 followers, you won't be getting 30,000 responses, and that's normal. But it's important to remember that the people who are going to be responding to these polls are going to be the cream of the crop of the influencers audience. They're going to be the most engaged, because they're the ones who are always replying to their stories on their posts, liking, listening, most importantly, and getting that, they're the most highly engaged people. So actually, these responses of the smaller subsection are the most vital ones, because they're going to be the ones who are most likely to convert. And then also just use polls to go beyond the faceless data. Instead of seeing, bare likes, views, impressions, that kind of thing, it's like, actually, this is giving people a voice, especially if you're using those more type in your own response kind of poll functionalities and comments. So the second method that we have is using survey research, and this is kind of the big brother to what we just talked about before. And so at Purpose Studio, we really were enjoying the responses we were getting from that polling data, and we've actually launched our own proprietary website, which is called influencermarketingresearch.co.uk. And this is our Uplift survey service, and it's designed to help measure influencers' effect, especially within a campaign. Now, you can actually use this survey service to measure all of your wider influencer, well, not just influencer, but marketing campaign efforts. But we often are using it to measure the impact and the resonance that our influencer marketing campaigns will have. And so what we'll do is we'll work with a brand to create maybe 6 or more questions, and that'll allow us to gather the insights on the effectiveness of a campaign, especially if you're going to do a survey both before the campaign has happened, start your marketing efforts, and then when it's finished, let's do another survey and see, has anything changed between the two? So the mechanic for this one in particular, we worked with Tio Pepe not only on the test and learn stories, but we also did a bespoke survey to really measure the kind of change in messaging of how well the messages that the influencers gave us penetrated with the audience. So what we did was we targeted 21 plus UK audiences, and this is important because Tio Pepe is an alcohol brand. There's a lot of ASA regulations involved with working with influencers when it comes to alcohol, gambling, all these kind of things. So we made sure that everything was age gated correctly, so that if anybody was trying to respond to the survey who were underage, they would just not be able to continue with the survey. So it's very important to abide by the regulations, especially in the UK. But what we did was we targeted these kinds of audiences to participate in the survey, and they had a chance to win an iPad mini. And we left this running for, I think it took about 2 weeks to get the target number of respondents. And here are some of the results that we can go through. So aside from the age gating questions, the next ones that we had was, do you know what Tio Pepe Fino is? And we were able to see that it was about 50-50 actually of the audience respondents, which is a great statistic for Tio Pepe to take into their future marketing campaigns. Often as well, the comments that we received on the kind of boosting adverts towards the survey were saying that actually they really enjoyed drinking Tio Pepe, which is another nice insight that we're able to give back to the brand. The next thing that we did with this to ensure that we were getting the right audiences responding was we actually asked the consumers who were taking this survey if they followed the particular influencer accounts of the influencers that we were working with on this campaign. So we were asking them, do they follow which social media accounts of the influencer do they follow? We were able to see that some of them had a much larger proportion, and some of them had a much fewer proportion. And so the next question after that was, if those respondents had followed the influencers who we work with on this campaign, it was then a question about actually, did they remember seeing the posts that we had put out with Tio Pepe Fino? And you can see that a kind of about, sorry, I need to zoom in my eyes, about 33% said that they had actually seen the posts, and then the other percentage had not seen it or they couldn't quite remember. So what can we actually do next time to ensure that the content that we're putting out there is going to stick out more in the audience's eyes? But at least we did see that some of them both did follow the influencers and then did actually see the content go live. What we did then to ensure that we were getting the most value out of all of the survey respondents was we showed the respondents who said that they either didn't see it or they actually couldn't remember seeing the content, the social media posts that were part of this campaign, and that gave them a chance to see the posts in their native format, read the captions, read the copy, take in and digest the messaging that we had put out, and then we were able to proceed with the rest of the survey now that everybody was up to date and on the same page. And so after reading all of these posts, we then were asking them, well, did their post make you want to try Tio Pepe Fino for yourself? And an overwhelming majority of 73.8% said yes, they did want to try it afterwards, which is fine because perhaps the rest of them maybe weren't big drinkers, but now we can see that actually from these posts, they were quite persuasive and a large majority did want to try the drink. We then asked them, actually, did the post educate you about Tio Pepe Fino? And again, we can see a majority of audiences either knew already about Tio Pepe Fino or they now were convinced that they were educated about Tio Pepe Fino themselves. And then the next kind of question that we asked was, which of the following flavors do you think would be best to describe Tio Pepe Fino? And this was a really crucial one for the client because they wanted to ensure that audiences knew actually what the flavors were because, again, as we said, it's quite a niche drink. And so we wanted to ensure that the influencers were helping to educate about the flavors. The majority did get it right in terms of dry and refreshing. I think the other options were sweet and sour and fizzy and fruity, which are not what you'd use to describe Tio Pepe Fino if you tried it. But this just gives us a chance that actually maybe next time what we could do is, in order to make more of the pie chart green, we can focus more on the flavors and really hammer home that key message because as you can see, the posts were quite long. There's a lot of information in the captions. So perhaps if we go forward with one more bespoke key message, we can help improve that proportion of the pie chart. And then finally, what's the likelihood of yourself purchasing a bottle of Tio Pepe to try? And you can see that actually it's very high and maybe is the vast majority of this pie chart, which is exactly what we want to see. And it really showed that the campaign was quite persuasive and we were able to get a great result for our client. And so the key takeaways from using a survey is that it helps you to measure the efficacy of your campaign beyond the face value stats that you'll get from social media and even from the test and learn. It allows you to get really granular, and your audience who are taking the survey are very highly motivated to complete the survey, and so they'll be willing to give you that extra data and that time in order for the chance to win an iPad mini as we did. Again, as I said before, if you run 2 surveys, so one pre, one post, you can actually compare and contrast your results and see, did the influencer marketing activity, did that help to change the results in any way, or what can you learn from it? And then you can also use surveys actually to test messaging against audiences. So similar to what I just showed you before a few slides ago, when I showed the audiences who didn't follow the influencers and hadn't seen the influencer marketing activity on those pages, we showed them the content there so they could consume it and digest it. And actually, you could almost A/B test in that way. If you were unsure about the messaging that you had put forward, you could show them there and get some audience honest feedback before actually going live with the content in front of the target audiences. And then 3 is our final kind of survey and research methodology, and that's going to be using it's a little bit different, but using some alternative KPIs. And this is something that we managed to do with a campaign that finished only a week or so ago, and that is with Bodyform. And this is their Womb Stories campaign, which is an amazing nationwide campaign. They've had TV adverts all over the internet, and we were able to work with the micro-influencers on social media. And so we worked with 9 micro-influencers. The aim was to create a very diverse campaign, not only in terms of the influencers that we were working with, but also the topics that we were covering of each individual person's unique womb story all the way through their life. So both from being young teenagers, also working with menopausal people who'd gone through that, through PCOS, different kind of situations, motherhood, LGBTQ+, different conditions, IVF. So we were able to create a really diverse campaign in terms of the messaging. and the stories that we covered. And here are a few of the clips of the stories that we worked with on this campaign. But what we did instead of doing polls was we actually asked the influencers to ask their own audiences what are their womb stories, and try and use that as the KPI for the campaign. And we can show you that we actually received a huge amount of womb stories from all of the different influencers' audiences, which they had consented to share with Bodyform, and just use as part of participating in this wider campaign. And you can see that actually, in terms of driving conversation, it's so completely different to how we would usually run a campaign, but it gives you such amazing and gives that human face to your campaign data. And you can see here, it's actually a little bit of difference between the influencers. So each of the proportions you can see on the pie charts is a different influencer. And we actually were able to compare it between the influencer performance of how many womb stories were they able to collect from their audience, and then how many people actually were clicking through to the Bodyform website, which was the second KPI. And you can see that it's not the same. Some of the influencers way overperformed compared to their audience proportion and their audience size compared to the other influencers on the campaign. They were able to get a lot more womb stories, but then some of the influencers were able to get a lot more clicks. So it really does show that not all influencers are the same. Even if you think that on the face value they're all micro influencers, they're all in this similar sector, actually the performance is so different, and this is the best way to kind of gather that kind of data. And so our kind of key takeaway there is just experiment with measuring new KPIs such as sentimental responses like those womb stories were. And it also gives your brand the amazing opportunity to foster some meaningful conversations, do some good with what you're doing, and allow your audiences and your creators to have a voice within your campaign and see what you can learn and put into your future campaigns. And that's everything that I have to share with you today. I don't know if we have some time for a few questions. It's the last 6 minutes, but I really hope that you enjoyed this. My email's on the screen if you have any questions, and obviously inside of the Social Day app, I'll be there to talk to you as well. But yeah, I hope this was really insightful, and I hope that it kind of got your cogs turning in terms of what you can do with influencer marketing campaigns, because it's a lot more than just holding up charcoal toothpaste in a picture and putting a hashtag. You can really talk to the people and then the people's people, so who's the influencer's audience and how can you directly speak to them as much as possible. I don't know if Lucy's going to be coming back to do any questions or anything, but yeah, I really hope you've enjoyed the session.
It's not Lucy.
Oh, hello. Hi. I can't see you. I think I got the...
It's Stuart. So how are you?
Hi.
Great talk, by the way, and congratulations on the Bodyform campaign. I did see you guys talking a bit about that on LinkedIn, which is really impressive and really good to see the insights behind it. We've got amazing. Time for... I was going to say, I've got time for a quick question. You have got a few in the app, so you might want to pop in the chat if that's okay with you after this, and just go through it. But Nick wants to know, what is your opinion on using double positive polls? As if people choose no, they will often skip the poll and not vote no.
I mean, obviously, this is all kind of self-declared data, so we have to understand that there are going to be biases. People are sometimes a little bit more hesitant to say no in a poll's response or something like that. Or even we see a lot of influencers putting out polls which are, they're basically, both options are just yes, just worded slightly differently. So you do have to take it with a pinch of salt, but it does help to give us a little slice more insight into what the audience is thinking. So yeah, my advice is obviously take it with a grain of salt, but it does kind of allow you to lift the lid a little bit and see under the car bonnet a little bit more in terms of what the audience are thinking.
Becky, Emily Williams has said, actually, I think it's one that we've had a few people ask in a couple of other sessions. Can you give some tips on how to find the right influencers, and especially on a tiny budget?
Yes, of course. So I would often say, it depends on which platform you want to work on, because actually some of the more emerging platforms like TikTok, even though your content on TikTok can have such a great opportunity to go viral, without you even having to put in as much effort, say, on other platforms, because of the nature of the platform, because it's such a new platform. And actually I've heard this term before, but TikTok has a little bit more of like a healthier middle class in terms of influencers. So actually there's a lot more influencers who are kind of big but not super big than any other platforms compared to YouTube or Instagram. It means that the rates are often actually a little bit lower. So if you're on a tiny budget, I mean, I would really say start things out maybe on Instagram, but also do consider those more emerging platforms like TikTok, because you can find a lot more influencers who, and also in terms of TikTok, you aren't really able to do that direct CTA, so there's not really a link in bio or anything, so it's a little bit harder to get that direct click through. But it's a really, it's an emerging platform. I would say that that's a really great place to, search through the hashtag, see who's out there, and then see who's actually willing to work with you, because it might be for a lower rate than compared to their Instagram page.
Brilliant, some brilliant advice there. All that's left for me to do is say thank you so much for taking the time to grace the Social Days virtual stage. We look forward to seeing you in person when we actually are allowed to put the event on for real. So
I'd love
thank
that.
you very much.
Thank you so much. Take care. Thank you.
Right, brilliant session and loads of great advice. And for those of you who've seen Becky, she really knows what she's talking about in the influencer space, having been one and is one.